morning. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the 2012 County Executive's budget presentation to the legislature. At this time, I'd like to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce our County Executive, Joni Mahoney, and to give her budget presentation for 2012. Joni?
Well, I wasn't sure I wanted everyone to hear me. I am here to present to you today our proposed 2012 county budget. Onondaga County is on firm financial footing. The economy remains a challenge, but I stand here before you with a balanced budget that continues our county's strong history of carefully planning for the needs of our citizens and at the same time being very efficient with their tax dollars. In this budget, the county tax rate will drop to $5.77 per thousand, which is down nearly $1.51, close to 21% since I took office in 2008. It's the lowest it's been since before 1960 and nearly half of what it was in the 1992 budget 20 years ago. My budget maintains a property tax levy of just under $154 million. The levy was reduced by $30 million in the 2011 budget and is down over 14% since I started. It's the lowest it's been since 2002, 10 years ago. I can tell you, though, that although our county can be commended for constantly striving to be more efficient, government does not cost the same today as it did 20 or even 10 years ago. The local part of our budget has been dramatically reduced. However, state-mandated costs have skyrocketed. Onondaga County's contribution to the state pension system in 2008 was $15.4 million. The estimate for our 2011 contribution is $32.4 million. Our bill from Albany has more than doubled in 4 years, with an actual dollar increase of $17 million. And for 2012, we're projecting another increase of 21%, which is an additional $7 million bill from Albany. There is a certain amount of fatigue with respect to the constant theme of state mandates, but the truth is that they continue to take the lion's share of our property tax dollars. The entire levy is still lower than the bill from New York State, and the one-year increase in state-mandated costs is $9.7 million this year. To put that in perspective, I'd like you to consider this. Our entire parks budget for 2012 is $9.1 million. We could eliminate the entire parks department and still not keep pace with just this year's increase in the state-mandated costs. In fact, there are 9 Albany-mandated programs that consume 90% of all county property taxes collected statewide. Counties across our state collected a total of $4.4 billion in property taxes in 2010. $4 billion of those dollars went straight to Albany to pay the bills for only 9 programs. These are 9 programs over which we have no input and no control, but we are expected to foot the bill. And this year, we're taking an extra hit in Medicaid for what's known as a calendar creep. The first Tuesday in 2013 is January 1st, and since banks are closed, our payment is due on or before December 31st, 2012, which will result in an additional weekly payment of Medicaid of $2 million. But don't think that there's relief on the horizon. If you count the remaining Tuesdays in 2013, you'll see that there are still 52. And when you hear that New York State does not charge statewide property taxes, please don't be fooled. It absolutely does, but it just uses us, the counties, as the middleman. We've become a pass-through which collects the money from our county homeowners and businesses to pay for the programs Albany approves. From 2008 until the budget in front of you today, our bills from the state have increased over $27 million. That's an 18% increase just since County Executive Pirro retired, and he was sounding the alarm bells long before he left. The good news, though, is that the sometimes difficult decisions we have made together over the past few years have not only helped Onondaga County weather the worldwide economic crisis better than most, but we've also weathered the Albany spending spree better than most. As you know, a 2% property tax cap is now the law in New York State, and its impact is being felt statewide. Many counties across the state are already preparing local legislation to override the cap. Fortunately, Onondaga County is not in that position. I believe the cap without mandate relief is a recipe for disaster, and I'm hopeful that the state will make the issue a priority when the legislature returns. In the meantime, we must continue to make responsible decisions and govern with a steady hand. But make no mistake, this point is perfectly clear. Now that the tax cap is in place, significant reforms which reduce the cost of state-mandated programs must occur. Onondaga County has been one of the best statewide at reducing our local costs while absorbing huge increases from the state. But we, too, will reach a tipping point if the Albany bills continue to spiral out of control. The budget I present to you today is one that continues our strong stewardship of the taxpayers' dollars and is focused on keeping our county financially sound. At the same time, this budget takes a longer-range view and considers the future impact of the decisions we're making today. One of the areas affected is our fund balance. The current projection has the general fund balance at $79 million at the end of 2011, which includes a $4 million surplus. As you know, this exceeds the county's policy of maintaining a fund balance of 10% of revenue, and the excess will be used to offset the need to raise property taxes to pay for the increasing costs of state mandates. This budget includes a $4.5 million sum of fund balance to help fill the gap. In addition, as you also know, in March of this year, I designated $5.5 million of fund balance to pay for the county's share of the early retirement incentive program. I continue to believe that we should make use of fund balance for this one-time cost and not make partial payments which will cost us more over time. As an update, please be aware that one of the requirements for participating in the early retirement incentive last year was agreeing that we would eliminate more than half the total number of positions which were vacated by retiring county employees. We have far exceeded that requirement. We are saving money on staffing. Let's pay the ERI charge all at once and maximize savings there as well. Sales tax revenues are strong and account for the bulk of the $4 million surplus the county expects to have at the end of the year. Please recognize, though, that if the projections are accurate, we will only now be getting back to sales tax levels which were collected in 2008. It continues to be a very slow recovery. The 2011 budget assumed approximately 2% growth in sales tax receipts, and with the benefit of events like the women's bowling tournament, we're expecting now that that number will exceed 3%. The budget before you today forecasts a 2.25% increase on top of that actual growth in 2011. It's more aggressive than we've been in recent budgets, and it will take an economy which is growing to make it happen. In addition to the appropriations for the early retirement incentive payment and the $4.5 million to fill a gap in this year's budget, I'm forwarding to you today a list of items that I'm asking the legislature to fund with fund balance. The list includes items outside of the normal operating budgets of county departments and represents appropriate projects to be funded with a one-time source of money. The list totals approximately $14 million, and when combined with the other fund balance appropriations, reduces the county fund balance to approximately $54 million, which is closer to 8% of our revenues. It's my hope that this year you will make an exception to your 10% policy, because using the fund balance in this manner addresses ongoing maintenance which has been neglected, and at the same time does not exacerbate a structural deficit in next year's budget. Funding these items will result in our ability to address many one-time expenses, continue to operate the government efficiently, and avoid having to raise people's property taxes. And while we can agree that the 2% property tax cap without mandate relief will cause future budget problems, we must work together now to mitigate that effect. A cap of 2% would not have been an issue for us in the recent budgets. However, in the early 90s and 2000s, it would have had a dramatic impact on the county, and for all but 4 of those years, the levy was higher than it is today. We cannot simply lower the property tax levy by putting off recurring expenses or inflating revenue projections. The only responsible way to lower the tax levy is by making cuts in the budget which are permanent. As the legislature reviews my budget, I will be open to discussions about legitimate cuts which would be recurring. I am proud of the job we've done as careful stewards of taxpayer dollars and will always be open to new cost-cutting proposals. There's also a balance which must be considered with respect to the relationship of the tax levy and fund balance to our county bond rating. Onondaga County has one of the highest bond ratings of any county, and we were actually upgraded in 2010. It's important to maintain our current bond rating because it results in lower costs for taxpayers when we need to borrow money for capital projects. When the rating agencies analyze municipalities, they look for stability, and our stability is reflected by the proportion of property tax to sales tax and room occupancy tax. A budget which more heavily relies on the more stable revenue sources will be rewarded with higher ratings. Although our budget process is focused on 2012, we're not operating in a vacuum. You showed foresight last year when you voted unanimously in favor of a new sales tax sharing formula, and we're seeing the effects through increased efforts to share services and consolidate municipalities, which will lower the overall cost of government for everyone. It's important to make smart choices that do not increase out-year gaps and be mindful that good sound bites are not always good policy. A key part of making smart choices is making smart investments. To that end, I propose the county implement an asset management system. Over the years, the county invested in many structures which are now aging and require maintenance. It is not prudent, though, to only consider the needs of each individual facility when we can instead use technology to help assess all of our facility needs. As part of preparing for our future workforce, we must determine what our space needs will be and implement a plan to maximize productivity and minimize expense. In county government, the Civic Center and the county office building are the core. Our asset management system will help us to maximize efficiency and space use and better address our long-term capital needs. This budget not only includes funding to implement the asset management system, it also allocates fund balance to begin projects to our core structures which are necessary and overdue. Since I began as county executive, I've made increasing government transparency a top priority, and this budget document furthers that goal. In the past, the capital improvement plan contained all capital projects which were under consideration by county departments. This led to the plan becoming more of a wish list than a planning tool. In creating the capital improvement project document this year, we challenged each department to prioritize projects within an overall budget. The result is a realistic plan of action. Many of these projects are long overdue and are necessary to preserve our assets while making them safer and more efficient. These buildings were built with taxpayer dollars under the watchful eyes of John Mulroy and Nick Puro. We have a duty to maintain them. We've also expanded the Parks Department section to include a park-by-park breakdown of our revenues and expenses. You will also see changes and a reallocation of budget numbers within the program profile section of each department budget. As part of our implementation of the PeopleSoft system, we're preparing program profiles to budget and track actual expenses in greater detail. This new software tool will help us better analyze data so that we may more easily identify opportunities for saving taxpayer money. The budget passed by last year's legislature cut funding for the arts and cultural organizations. Fortunately, the Cultural Resources Trust assumed the obligation on the county's behalf. Although the Trust's mission is not to fund the day-to-day operations of cultural groups, we owe them our thanks for throwing a lifeline to many of these community treasures. Having depleted much of the Trust's funds on the arts last year has limited its ability to help again. So our county's cultural organizations will be embarking on a new initiative. This year, I propose providing $1.2 million to fund our arts and culture organizations. This sum represents 22% of our room occupancy tax revenues. In future years, I intend to propose the same fixed percentage of room tax revenues for arts and culture organizations so that they may better plan for the future. This new program will provide a steady, recurring source of funding for these organizations. I'm also proposing a public-private partnership and thank Chairman Reinhardt for his work on this important proposal. In the future, a portion of county funds must be matched by private donations before the funds are released to the arts organizations. In last year's budget, I announced we would pursue using the resources and expertise of our Division of Purchase to help other municipalities in Onondaga County save money, while doing the same for our own county departments. I'm pleased to report that in the few months we've been operational, we've already saved county taxpayers over $200,000 as part of an overall savings of nearly $900,000. In the coming weeks, you will hear from Purchasing Director Sean Carroll about his successes and what he needs if we are to expand this program to all of our towns and villages. And it's my hope that you will vote to fully fund this proven initiative. I'm also proud to report that we've made tremendous progress since first announcing OnGov Enterprise, our new integrated approach to transform how we deliver services to county residents. I mentioned earlier the promise of the PeopleSoft program. This January, we will move from an outdated set of financial applications running on an expensive mainframe to modern replacements which run on less expensive computer systems. In January 2013, we will move our human resources and payroll applications onto this modern platform. I thought it was 2012. I'm also pleased to report that the contracts we negotiated with the software companies will allow us to offer these very same applications at no cost to any of our towns and villages. To prepare ourselves for this change, we've begun a significant reorganization of our information technology department. One example of this is that my 2012 budget moves all purchasing of personal computers and laptops from individual departments to the IT department, enabling us to dramatically reduce purchasing and maintenance costs over the life cycle of this equipment. And I'm pleased to share that after 23 years at the galleries, the Central Library is ready to be reconfigured to better serve our county's residents. Of equal importance, the Central Library will be less expensive to operate when our reconfiguration project is complete. In January 2011, the library released a study recommending we downsize the Central Library by vacating about 60,000 square feet on the 3rd and 4th floors of the galleries. The Central Library will then move into a smaller space on the ground floor where a new entrance from South Salina Street will welcome readers of all ages to space that's been reconfigured to meet the needs of today's families. The governor and our state legislature have included a $2.5 million grant for our Central Library downsizing and reconfiguration project in their state budget, and I'm asking this legislature to authorize $5.2 million in bonding for this project. The discussions with members of the legislature leading up to today have been productive. I appreciate the effort put forth by Chairman Reinhardt, Floor Leader Lesniak, and Minority Leader Stanzik, as well as those members of their caucus who have helped to shape this budget. We've tightened and tightened and tightened and have driven our tax rate down in the face of huge increases in our bills from Albany. Let's continue to find smart ways to meet our obligations and work together to fight for the real mandate relief our county taxpayers deserve. Before I end, I want to thank Jim Rowley, our CFO, and his incredible team of budget analysts for the hours and hours and hours of work that go into preparing this budget that I present to you today. We owe them a debt of gratitude. They spend a lot of summer nights working on the budget. And I know that for many members of the county legislature, this will be your last budget. And I want to thank you for your years of service to Onondaga County. Chairman Reinhardt, you have been a formidable opponent on many occasions and a strong ally on others. I wish you and the other members of the legislature who will not be here next year all the best in your next adventures. And for those of you who plan to return, there's still time to change your minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joni. With that, we stand adjourned.